Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the Talk Witchcraft podcast. In this episode, Erica and I will be talking about how to make the most of Leo season. You're listening to Talk Witchcraft. On this podcast, we talk about witchcraft as a lifestyle and discover how to merge magic into your daily life.
Every week, we'll demystify witchy topics like tarot, astrology, crystals, herbs, and more as you develop your personal brand of magic and create the life of your dreams. We're your hosts, the Mystic Sisters, Erica
and Maggie.
In this segment of the show, we choose a tarot card for the week and we look for moments that relate to this card in our daily lives. For this episode, we will choose the King of Wands. The theme of this card is authority and leading by example. This king is a king of taking action.
And if you look at the Rider-Waite version of this card, the wand that he's holding is actually resting a step down from where his throne is. And that makes me think that he is ready to move in like a single swift motion. His throne also appears to be temporary, or you could break it down easily. And so if this king needs to jump up and move into action, then he can do that really easily. So there's this sense of like eagerness and readiness and willingness to move forward and take action, like you said.
This king is a great leader who isn't going to just sit back and watch while other people do the work. He's like in the action. He's on the front line. He is the kind of boss who will roll up his sleeves and do the work when he sees that help is needed. What is your King of Wands story, Maggie?
So when I was reflecting on this card, I was thinking, the kings can also be women. And so I was trying to think of a story where either I felt like this or I knew a woman who I felt like was a leader and something like that. But all that came to me was two different managers in two different restaurants that I worked for, both men. So a king can be a woman, but in this case, it made me think of a man. But anyway, they stand out to me as what you might consider to be like the upright version of this card and the reverse of this card. So one manager that I remember in particular, he would get in there and he would bus tables. If we were really busy and we couldn't do it, he would run food to tables. He would clean the bathroom even. He would wash dishes if the dishwasher needed a break. Whatever needed to be done, he would see it and he could really see what would help make the restaurant run more smoothly. And he didn't see it as beneath his position as manager. He saw it as part of his job as manager. So I always enjoyed working when he was managing because I felt like that kind of trickled to everybody else and they would all be really helpful as well. He'd be so helpful jumping in on these things that weren't technically his job. And then other servers would offer to help if they had a spare minute. And, the bussers were doing their job better. The kitchen staff was much more friendly and helpful. And so that really makes me think of a King of Wands who's just really, like Erica said, going to roll up his sleeves and do the work. Not necessarily like a kingly thing to do, but that manager did that. But then I have a contrasting manager who was not fun to work with. It was like he thought he was like better than the labor. Once he got promoted from server to manager, he was just like not willing to do that work anymore. And he had this attitude of that being beneath him, that the work necessary to run the restaurant was not his job anymore, even though that was his job description, was to run the restaurant successfully. So in one sense, yeah, he did, put in the work, he got promoted, he deserved that promotion. But as soon as he was promoted, it was like he became entitled. And so he was sort of blameful of other people as well. Like when things started to go crazy or we got in the weeds, he would blame the servers or the hostesses, like, why aren't you doing your job? And we would have to explain, we're really busy. And instead of offering to help or finding what to do to help do it better, he wouldn't notice that, like, I have 10 tables and I just got 5 seated to me. All of them are looking for me. Two of my tables need their check. Somebody needs ranch, but I don't remember where it goes. the kitchen just all called for people to take food out, all of these things, if you've worked in a restaurant, how these things build up. And I wouldn't even have time to like answer that question and explain to him why it was hard. But he wouldn't be able to figure it out on his own. He wouldn't, take that initiative and help or figure out how to do that. So I see that as more of like the reverse King of Wands.
Yeah, I see that. And as you were telling your story, and as I was thinking about this card, I was, we just had the 4th of July here in America. I don't know if we have foreign listeners, but if we do, hi. But we just had the 4th of July, and we watched that movie from the 90s, Independence Day. And I'm just thinking of this scene where the president, he gives his like really strong independence speech where you all get chills, and it's like, yay, this is our Independence Day, and everybody's cheering. And then he starts to walk to his airplane, and his aide, like the Secretary of Defense or something like that, he's like, what the heck are you doing? And the president's like, I'm a fighter pilot. I fly planes. This is like my military experience is what got me elected to be president. And by gosh, I'm going to be leading by example. And so like that is what this King of Wands is about.
Totally. Yeah, that's a good example. I love that movie.
I love that movie too. So for my King of Wands story, I was actually my own King of Wands, and this kind of actually happened this week. So we were having a staff meeting, and remember, I'm only 2 months into this job. But the owner of the company was having connectivity issues from her home, and it kept dropping her from our meeting because we're still in COVID precautions. We're still, virtually having these staff meetings. And, I'm a leader by nature, and I have been struggling with my jobs for years to afford me a leadership position because I am that. I am a leader, and I've been in my career long enough that I can lead. And so because I'm a natural leader, I just kind of took over the meeting, and nobody said boo. They're just like, yep, let's follow Erica. And the owner texted the group and said, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. I can't get on. Erica, send me the notes of what happens or what I missed. And so I immediately start taking minutes, and I'm having people go around and ask their questions. And, we're just kind of making our way, stumbling through the meeting. And then I emailed my notes to the owner, and she replied with, way to go, you're hired. And I kind of like laughed it off because obviously I've already been hired. I said, LOL, thanks. And she's like, no, seriously, if you want a leadership position, I could really use some help with leading meetings when I'm unable to attend. And it was like this breath of fresh air of like, finally, somebody sees the leadership qualities I have in myself and is willing to give me those opportunities. And it just felt so good, and was absolutely a moment of a leader seeing a need and taking action. And yeah. I felt very proud of myself.
I hadn't heard that yet, so I'm very proud of you. That's awesome. And of course you are a leader, so that totally makes sense that you would see that for this card. And I'm really glad that she saw that in you. And that opportunity came up.
Yeah, and it was what made it so special was the fact that every time I had asked for leadership opportunities, it had been shut down. And this was the first time that somebody had recognized that quality in me and offered it to me without me asking. So It was a really cool moment.
Yeah, I think that that's an important thing to see too, because, sometimes they say that in order to like love yourself or be proud of yourself, somebody else, you have to, what do they say? That to have other people love you, you need to love yourself first. But I've always disliked that saying, because sometimes you need someone else to be proud of you and to love you before you can see that in yourself. And so that's kind of what happened too. I mean, obviously you're proud of yourself more than because of this, but somebody saw it in you too, and that gives you more reason to be proud of yourself. And that brings us to our topic, which is all about Leo season and being prideful and loving yourself and having fun and things like that. So let's start by reminding our listeners what we mean when we talk about the zodiac seasons, and then we'll get to those 5 ways to make the most out of Leo season that we mentioned at the beginning of this episode. So the zodiac seasons are determined by the solstices and the equinoxes, and those 4 points in the year divide the sky around the earth into 4 quadrants. And then those 4 quadrants are further divided into 3 more segments, and 4 times 3 is 12, and that's how we get our 12 zodiac seasons. So as the sun travels through each of those segments of the sky, that's how we determine which zodiac season that we're in, and we're moving into Leo season. And as we move into Leo season, we can start to prepare for that by doing these different activities that we're talking about in this episode. So what is the first way to make the most of Leo season, Erica?
The first way to make the most of Leo season is to let yourself brag and show off your joys. This is summertime for Northern Hemisphere folk, and it's a time to celebrate life and enjoy everything life has to offer you. We've just had the summer solstice when the solar energy was at its peak, and now we're approaching the harvest season, which is the first celebration called Lunasa, occurring during the Leo season. It's so hard to like brag and be, to talk about yourself and to say like, I'm really good at this, but this is the time to do it. This is when Leo is in full charge, and Leo is prideful and he likes to brag.
Yes, exactly. And there's so much to brag about. Like Erica said, we're approaching harvest season with Lunasa and then Mabon and then Samhain, and there's so much abundance during those harvests. So when you have all of this abundance surrounding you, there's so much to be grateful for, and the more that you see what you can be grateful for and what is worthy of that praise and celebration in your life, the more you will have to praise and celebrate, because you're acknowledging those things, and you'll see more and more what you're proud of, what you're joyful about. And so this is a great time to allow that generous, fun, magnanimous energy into your life, and then to take that opportunity to show off a little and even brag.
Yeah, I was, talking about the harvest season coming in, all my vegetables are starting to grow, and I got 5 like 2-foot long zucchinis, and I have no idea. They just appear. Like zucchini does that. It just appears and it's large and in charge. And I was able to make 6 little baggies of 2 cups of shredded zucchini, so that I can make zucchini bread all winter long, and it'll be amazing.
Oh, that'll be so much fun, because you think of zucchini bread as like a summer thing, and you'll get to take that like sunny harvest energy into the winter and let that fill you with the solar energy all of the time.
Yeah, so really, really surrounded in abundance here with zucchini.
And it's sort of like what we were talking about last week with like kitchen witchcraft, making the zucchini bread. You're kind of instilling the Lunasa harvest energy into the zucchini bread, and you can have that forever. So much abundance. So let's talk about the second way to make the most of Leo season, and it is to love yourself and to be proud of yourself. And in Western culture, as we've kind of mentioned so far, boasting and bragging is sort of looked down on, and I don't really like that. I think we should be able to brag about the things that we are happy about and proud of ourselves about. So I have to clarify a story with you though, Erica. Do you remember this? So I was remembering something from childhood, and I think I was filling out a job application, but it might have been you, Erica. And whichever one of us had some sort of weird feeling and verbalized that. And it was about making a list of accomplishments. And I remember our dad saying something about that when you're writing down a job application, when you're sharing your accomplishments, how else will they know what you're capable of if you don't tell them?
Yeah, I do remember that, and I can't remember if it was me or you also, but I do feel it was like a resume,
Oh,
because
yeah.
there's that section of where you have to list like, I'm good at Excel and I'm good at, all of your accomplishments and things. So I think that that's that section that we're talking about. He was saying that you have to tell people about yourself in order for them to know who you are. And you have to be able to say, I'm really good at something. If they're just reading a paper about you, that you have to be able to say, I am good at this. But it's so hard to say, like, I'm a leader and I'm motivated and I believe that deadlines exist for a reason, and to say all those things, because it does feel like bragging, and we're told so much like, don't brag. I don't know why though.
And
Why?
especially at such a young age, like now I feel like what you were saying before, that now you've come into that feeling of being a leader because of all your experience and stuff. And when we were, whichever one was doing this, it was like in high school or something. So we'd been conditioned our whole life to not brag. And that's so silly that we have to wait until we're in our 30s to be able to feel comfortable bragging. So
Well, and it's that whole fill your cup before you fill someone else's. The put your oxygen mask on before helping somebody else with theirs when your plane is crashing into the ground. That if you love yourself, you have more love to go around. And if you're looking after your own well-being, but by focusing on what's great about who you are, then you're going to be able to, help the people in your job or help the people in your community. And, so talking about yourself and being confident in yourself and being proud of yourself should be looked at as a good thing.
yeah. And I think that's what Leo teaches us, to be confident without being arrogant, because sometimes that's one thing that Leo, as a sign, if you are a Leo, it's thought of as arrogance. But there's a difference between being confident and being arrogant. And I think sometimes people say those two things together, and you can be confident without being arrogant, and to lead with example of love, and then to also pay that forward, be really generous and giving with your heart, because putting yourself first, giving yourself love, filling your cup, and then you'll have this full generous heart that you can pay it forward to other people.
So the third part of celebrating Leo season is to find the fun in flirting and dating. So, whether you're single and ready to mingle or in a committed relationship or somewhere in between, you're never too old to flirt. Flirting sometimes is viewed as like cheating. I say that in quotes, but you, dear listener, can't see me doing the air quotes. But flirting is just having a confidence in yourself and an ability to communicate with other people. It's being charismatic, it's being confident, it's being playful, it's all of these things, and it doesn't have to be romantic. Flirting doesn't have to be romantic. So you can shower a friend with love, if that's more your speed. You can flirt with a friend, you can flirt with different kinds of relationships that you have in your life.
So yeah, when I think about flirting, I think like a lot of people do think of it as being romantic, but like you said, it doesn't have to be romantic. You can flirt with an idea, and basically it's just like showing interest in something in a really playful way, and being really it's almost superficial in a way. Like it's not about like a deep romantic love or a deep attraction or anything like that. It's like on the surface where you're just like having fun, being playful, and not taking yourself too seriously, you know?
Exactly. You're just I feel like we get into this spot of it being this romantic indication of undying love, but it's not. It's just being friendly and having a conversation with somebody.
Yeah. So during Leo season, one way that you can flirt is to, you could take yourself out on a date, and maybe it could be with the intention of meeting someone to flirt with, or you could plan a special event with somebody that you are in a relationship with, or a friend even, in order to rekindle a friendship, or to remember what it's like at those beginning stages of a relationship, whether that's with a friend or a romantic partner. And just remember that like playfulness and the light-hearted fun. So we have 2 more ways to make the most of Leo season. But before we do that, let's talk about the herb of the week. So what is it, Erica?
This episode is brought to you by Chamomile.
Chamomile.
Chamomile. So I'll start by telling you about the medicinal properties, and then you can share the magical properties. Before I start, I do want to put a shout out to a place where I'm getting all of my information from. The Golden Poppy is an apothecary and herbal store that is local to me, but they have an awesome materia medica. A materia medica being just a collection of the properties for different herbs. And they have set it up really well and easy to read. And I use their resources a lot. So again, that's Golden Poppy. So chamomile, first and foremost, is one of those few herbs that is kid-friendly and totally safe. Chamomile is great for putting some calmness in children. It's good for colds and flus. It can help break a fever or settle a stomach. And it's really, really gentle. So it's good for young children, and it's also good for the elderly population who might have a more sensitive system. Chamomile can be done in tea or as an essential oil, and it's just a very gentle herb. Its Latin name is Matricaria ricuccia, or Anthemis nobilis. It is part of the daisy family, and you can harvest the flowers when they're blooming in the summer. And because it's very calming, it's got a very, very delicate flower, and the leaves are delicate too. They look like lace. It's one of those things where, they say that walnuts are good for your brain because it looks like a brain. Chamomile is good and gentle and calm because it looks good and gentle and calm. And it looks just like a little white daisy, but it's much smaller. And so when you're preparing it, again, like I said before, you can put it in a tea. It's good in a bath, which would be great for kids who are having some upper respiratory infection, for them to breathe it in. Mixing it with some Epsom salts would be great as well. You can also use the essential oil if your child's a little squeamish about having flowers floating in their bath. And then you can also use it in a tincture, which is the flowers being infused in alcohol. For our, Alcohol Anonymous friends out there, we are in the herbalism world trying to find ways to make tinctures without alcohols. We have not really been successful, but that's why it's good as a tea and in different kinds of salves and stuff like that. So you can still get the benefits without having that alcohol exposure. So it's great, like I said, for colds and flus. It's a nervine, so it works on your nerves. It's antispasmodic and anti-inflammatory. There's antimicrobial, antibiotic, and antiviral components to it. It's also a tonic, which is going to work on your system of really toning anything you want to fix. So, going back to that anti-inflammatory piece, really bringing that swelling down in an upper respiratory infection. Last but not least, good for uneasy stomachs, helps with nausea, morning sickness, any kind of thing like that where you're just a little like maybe some heartburn, anything like that. Good for ulcers, good for anything that's swelling, and it's also good for healing wounds. So if you have a scratch or something like that and it's starting to welt or have some red inflammation, you can put it on as a salve, and it'll help with that inflammation there. It's also really good for allergies and asthma, which is a form of inflammation. So lots of inflammation stuff.
Very interesting.
Yeah. What are the magical properties of chamomile?
So chamomile is an active herb, so it is about projecting rather than, receiving, and it is associated with the sun and Mercury, as well as the fire, air, and water elements, and obviously Leo, the zodiac sign. So it can be used for so many things. Just like Erica said, it's very good for all these different medicinal uses. It's also kind of multi-purpose for magical purposes. The most common uses are for healing, reducing stress and calming, protection, and then also for money and particularly luck with money. So in terms of like gambling and that kind of thing. So you can use it in bath magic too. Well, you can use it in pretty much any type of magic because it's safe to use, topically, internally, or as an aromatherapy. So you can add it to a bath as a tea, and not only will it have those healing benefits that Erica talked about, but you could use this as a way to project to the world that you are ready to invite love into your life. You could use it as a way to protect yourself and kind of absorb the water as you're in the bath with it for protection, and as well as de-stressing. And in particularly using it as an incense for de-stressing, because then either as an essential oil or as an incense where you're smelling it, that's really good for de-stressifying or calming yourself, especially right before meditation or before sleep, so that you're calming yourself down before you're going into that really calm and meditative state. And chamomile can be really helpful with dream work as well. So having a cup of chamomile tea before bed can help you to remember your dreams better and to have more clear dreams. So in terms of protection, you can either drink it as a tea, and that on its own can be really protective. You can make it as a tea that you use as a wash. So that basically you make a tea as you would for drinking it, but instead of drinking it, you would wash your floors, wash your doors, wash your windows with this infusion of chamomile, and that can remove any sort of hexes or curses that you feel have been placed on you or on your home, or it can be a way to protect you from those things happening. So as like more of a ward. If you add chamomile to like a bag with a bunch of other prosperity herbs and crystals and you could carry that around with you, that's a way to increase money that's coming your way. And also if you're doing some sort of like gambling or playing cards, maybe you have a trip to Vegas coming up or something like that, you can take this kind of prosperity bag with you with chamomile. And it's thought that this will help you to increase your chances of winning. Or maybe you're going to buy a lotto ticket, you might bring some chamomile with you. And then you can also burn chamomile as an incense, as I said before, and do this in terms of prosperity. So it's really all about your intention, what your intention for the spell is, what the purpose is for your spell or ritual, whether you're trying to bring in prosperity and abundance or luck, whether you're trying to invite more love into your life, or protection, or stress relief, or general healing. You can use it in all of these different ways, as an incense, as a tea, in bath magic, all of these different ways that I've mentioned, and for all of these different purposes.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just a really versatile herb, both magically and medicinally.
Yeah, it has a lot of different uses. And I think that's probably just because it's so common. It's found on, you know, all over the world, different varieties of it. So there's just different ways that people have used it in time and space.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, it really just works well with other herbs and spices. A lot of these herbs that are associated with the sun are multi-purpose and amplify other herbs and spices properties. So if you add chamomile to a different with a different herb, it'll just amplify the effects of that herb as well. So it really is super versatile. So should we get back to our topic for this week?
Yeah.
The last two ways to make the most of Leo season. Okay, so the fourth way to make the most of Leo season is to connect with your creative side. Leo is associated with the fifth house of the astrological houses, and that is the house of creativity. And so that is one of the reasons why we thought this would be a good thing to do during Leo season. We'll have to do a whole episode probably on the houses of astrology at some point, won't we, Erica?
I know. We're gonna have to. There's a couple topics that I feel we'll have to do like a series of.
Yeah. So anyway, back to this topic. There's connecting with your creative side. You know, I think everyone is creative in one way or another, but I think I hear often people say, well, I'm not creative. But you are. Everyone's creative. And I think that idea of, oh, I'm not creative makes it so that people sort of neglect that part of themselves. So maybe you are an artist and you paint on a canvas, and that's like kind of the traditional way to think of creativity. Or maybe you're artistic more with like a typewriter or a keyboard and you write with you use your creativity for writing. But creativity can also happen in the kitchen. You can be really creative with the food that you make, or it can be creative with, well, crafting is another commonly thought of as creative, but using craft supplies to create something new, using fabric, anything like that. Or maybe you create a party out of basically nothing and you're really good at planning events. Maybe you're really good at setting routines and schedules. And so any way that you are creating something out of nothing, that is using your creativity. That's how you can be creative. So that's like, designing graphics if you're a graphic designer, or creating spreadsheets if you're sort of a data analyst type person. So like I said, any way that you're creating something is being creative.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes we get stuck in this worldview of creativity, meaning you have to be doing some sort of hobby, or some making something, being a painter, being a sewer, being a writer, that we get stuck in this like very specific defined version of what creativity means. But there's so many different ways to be creative. So whatever creativity means to you, get in touch with it and let go of some of that seriousness of life, and think outside the box for a little bit and create something new that you wouldn't normally have done.
Yeah, I think that's kind of key there too, because I think like you said, that a lot of times we think of creativity as like a hobby or something that isn't what you do for fun. And but it doesn't have to be. So much of Western culture is defined by what you can produce, and it's really supposed to be like serious, like making something for money basically. And that can be part of creativity, is, like I said, you're creating something out of nothing, but it can still be fun, even if it's like part of what you're doing for work.
For me, productivity is a 4-letter word. I hate that word. I hate productivity because it's this capitalistic ideal of like work, get it done. It's conveyor belts, it's getting things out and done and off to market. But I think about my boyfriend's job, where he's a software designer, and much of his time is seriously just looking at code and finding creative ways to make things work. And it really, like, it's not productive time. He's not making something to sell. He's using his time to be creative, to make a product that's already out there work better. And so we don't have to have this go, 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 go attitude. Sometimes we can stop and just think, and, that, like I said, to think outside the box. A creative solution may get you to a productive place, but it takes time. And I hated when I was working in retail, where it was like, if you've got time for leaning, you've got time for cleaning. And it's like, no, sometimes I just need to lean.
Right. And sometimes while you're doing that, your brain is working on how to make it more efficient. And eventually that's going to result in more productivity for the company. Like giving your brain a rest is not that should be the goal of your leaning and relaxing time, but sometimes that's how those good ideas form, is when you have that opportunity to just rest and not be forced to grind and hustle. Those two words that's like part of our culture right now, is just like, what's your grind right now? Or like side hustles and things like that. And sometimes you just need to have things that aren't monetized,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and you hear about all of these companies like Google, or even small little companies that that are engineer based, whether it's computer engineer or whatever, that where that mind productivity is needed a lot. A lot of these companies have game rooms. They have video games set up. They have guitars available to play. They've got pool tables, they've got coffee and bars and all kinds of stuff, because they recognize that they can't just sit at their desk the entire day and produce, and that sometimes they need to take a step back, because, like you said, those moments of relaxing and being creative and playing and having fun will produce a new idea on how to solve a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really making me think of the ace cards, which we haven't really talked about on this podcast yet, but the aces it's always the hand of God coming out of like a cloud on the Rider-Waite-Smith version of the tarot decks. And I always think of that, like in Zelda, there's here, take this tool. It's dangerous to go alone. Here, take this. And so that's kind of like when you take that moment to rest or to play or to be creative, something will appear to you that will help you in the next stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that kind of leads us into our next topic, which is about treating yourself to an indulgence. Like, take some time to, be like a kid in a candy shop and revel in these really simple pleasures. Spoil yourself with love and treats and gifts and games and all of those things that you've kind of been holding back from. Maybe you were on a diet from your overindulgence in the holiday season. Like, maybe it's time to go and have that ice cream cone, or buy that toy that you've been putting off. Like, this is the time to do it. Indulge.
Yeah. And since it's Leo season, and if we're in the Northern Hemisphere, it's summer, like we talked about. So it's in indulging yourself, you're treating yourself like you're the sun, and you get to radiate and spread joy and laughter wherever you go by having fun, looking at things like a kid who's just really excited about everything because everything's new and different. And you can spread that around as well, like as if you're throwing glitter on the world. And so I think it's really important to just remember that each of us is unique, and we all have all of these things to offer the world that is unique to each individual person. And at the same time, the world has so much to offer each of us if we indulge in it. And if we take that opportunity to look at life's simple pleasures, and things that you might normally deny yourself or your loved ones, but to really indulge in those things, you can get a lot out of the world, and the world will have a lot to give you.
Yeah, I'm in a place right now in my life that I feel like I'm really embracing Leo in this indulgence factor of because I've been neglected for a really long time as myself. I've hidden myself to care for another person that was toxic. And so I'm really trying to embrace this indulgence piece of my life because it was denied me for so long. So one of the things, and Maggie, you're going to love this, is I am officially planning my super extra, overindulgent, all-inclusive trip to Disney World.
Yay! That means I get to see you and also go.
Yes. And it's been on my bucket list forever. It's something that I want to do. It'll bring me joy. And I've been reaching out to some friends who have they work for the Disney travel agencies to get, pricing and kind of figure out what I want to do and how I want to do it. I have friends who have a timeshare on Disney property.
Whoa.
So they can so I'm like, can I use your timeshare, please? And thank you. And so it's totally an overindulgence. It has no practical merit at all. But I want it.
Yeah.
I want it. And yeah.
And it's like also the kid in you, like people always say that Disney World is for kids, which is silly because, once you become a grown up, you shouldn't have to give up the things that are fun for kids. You should be able to still enjoy that kind of things. And the fact that I just called us grown-ups means that I'm not grown up yet because I don't think grown-ups call themselves that.
Well, and there's this idea of you can still enjoy the things that you enjoyed as a kid, but with a different perspective.
Yeah. And it's totally different because you also recognize the value of that. Like when you're a kid, you don't necessarily know how much things cost. So you don't maybe appreciate it the same way that you're going to appreciate it as someone who's saving and planning and doing all of that, putting that into it so that you can have a really wonderful time.
Mm-hmm.
That's Leo season. Those are 5 things that you can do during Leo season to really enjoy it and to make the most of the energy. And we are going to move on to our next segment of the show where we talk about the moon phase and your assignment for the moon phase. We are back to a full moon. And the full moon has kind of 2 separate parts. We have it's a transition point from the waxing half of the lunar cycle to the waning half of the lunar cycle. So the first thing is to think about something that you're celebrating. So, list at least 3 things that you're really grateful for. Do you have something to share, Erica, from the last 2 weeks, 3 things you can express gratitude for?
Yeah, I can express gratitude for my new boss for seeing the leadership quality in me. I am grateful for a job that pays me well and that I have a family that is supportive for me financially. And so I finally feel like I'm out of this cloud of debt and financial ruin. And honestly, it's silly, but I'm grateful for my kitty cat this week because she was like the epitome of scaredy cat. And in the last week, she has gone up to both Kim and Miles, my housemates, demanding attention, snuggling with them. Kim was taking a nap the other day and Pork Chop, my cat, went and laid on Kim's bed with her and snuggled with her, which she has never done.
And that's impressive.
Last night she came downstairs and wandered around downstairs for a good hour with Charlie, the dog, just kind of laying there. And so I'm just grateful that she is starting to feel really safe and at home and is totally turning into a different cat.
Yeah, sounds like she's embracing her Leo side, becoming a bold lion.
Yes. I call her a puma.
Oh. Well, I am grateful for one thing. My husband has been very supportive of this whole journey with Mumbles Academy, taking some time off and needing to, shut the doors for a little bit. And it's really been so beneficial to my own mental health. I was facing sort of a burnout and not really wanting to do things, and having this time off has helped me to recognize why I do this and get new ideas for making it better. But having my husband's support has made that even possible. Without his, financial support as well as emotional support, it wouldn't have been possible to take this time. I would have had to continue to hustle and grind, so to speak. So I'm grateful for that. I'm also grateful for, I got a new teapot.
It's a very cute teapot. It's blue and it's very classic teapot looking.
It's the perfect teapot shape, and it has I don't have it in right now to show Erica, but it has a little like seal on the top. So when you it has like a little strainer to go inside of it, and when you put the lid on, it sticks into the strainer where you put the tea leaves. And then when you pull the lid off, it brings the strainer out with it. So it's very practical. And it's just, I had another teapot and I did like it, but it was getting old. And also I accidentally left the strainer part in Portland when we moved to Florida. So I have had to use like reusable or disposable tea bags for my loose leaf teas. And so it was just kind of annoying. And I accidentally broke it. So I can't use that one anymore. But now I got this one and I'm really grateful for it. Today's the first day I'm using it. And it's just been like really fun and reinvigorating my joy of tea. And I'm also grateful for my cats. And I don't think it sounds silly, Erica, to be grateful for the cats, because then I would be silly, and that is not a thing. And but they have been super snuggly with me. I don't know what it is. They having two cats has been kind of like a blessing and an annoyance, because they will snuggle with each other and they don't need snuggles from humans. But lately they've been snuggling with each other, but like next to me. So they're like, and I'm just really enjoying, like, they'll headbutt me and be really sweet. So yeah, cats are special.
Yeah.
So then the other part of the full moon is that we are transitioning into that release phase of the waning half of the lunar cycle. So is there anything that you want to release during this next 2 weeks up to the new moon?
I would like to release this feeling of my priorities are the same as everybody else's priorities. And it's something that I kind of try to release all the time, and I can never quite do it. So just like, my dad said to me when I got my first big girl job, and I got really mad at one of my coworkers for not doing something when I thought in the time frame that I thought it needed to be done. And he just gently reminded me that they have their own things going on in their position, in their job, that are different from my priorities for my position and my job. And it crosses not just jobs, but family life and friend life, and all different areas of my priorities are not their priorities, and that's okay. And all I need to do is just do my job.
That's a good one to remember. Our dad's pretty wisdomous.
He is.
So for me, I want to release, I had a really nice reading, tarot reading with Jennifer Gregson, who I'll give a shout out to. She's teaching a class called Turning on the Tap, and it's about using the tarot to help unlock your muse for writers. And I have been a writer for a long time. Obviously, I've been writing these blog posts, but I've always thought of myself as a nonfiction writer, writing witchcraft things and about, spirituality. And for some reason, I've just had this block about writing fiction, and I've been really wanting to do that more. And she just had like a lot of really good insight using the tarot cards to help me get through some things that I'd been considering. And so one of the things that we talked about needing to release is, what is my block for calling myself a writer? So I'm trying to release that and allow myself to take that title. And so one idea we had was to call myself a word witch instead, because maybe there's something about the word writer that is hard for me. So word witch is my new title. And releasing whatever is the things that are keeping me from prioritizing fiction writing, or prioritizing nonfiction writing over the fiction writing, thinking about it as like only something I do for fun. And that ties back into our Leo season discussion about creativity and having fun with things, and that not being like a bad way to spend your time, like doing things just for the sake of doing things. So I'm releasing my blocks about fiction writing.
All right. Yeah, I think with the block around being called a writer, there's almost like an elitism and like this academic feeling of like you have to be really good to be a writer.
Yeah, or like there's like a level that you have to, or a threshold of like you have to write a certain amount or whatever. But I think there's like a popular Twitter post that's like you're a writer if you write, like that's how you become a writer. So I just have to write, and then there we go.
Yeah. But word witch feels more in line with your mannerisms than writer.
Yeah. And I love like the play on words with puns and things like that. So I also feel like there's like a magical, mystical quality to just playing with words in some way. So that's why, I like it.
Yeah, good. So now we want to hear from you. If you go to witchwanderer.com, you'll find the latest game. This week we have a question for you. What is the one thing you wish non-witches understood about magic and witchcraft?
What a good question. Is there something that you would wish that non-witches understood about magic and witchcraft, Erica?
For me, I think it would be the understanding that we're not necessarily, and I know some people do, but for me personally, I'm not doing like Harry Potter, Tinkerbell, waving a magic wand, witchcraft. I am using witchcraft and magic as a way of using what's inside myself and manifesting things that I would like to see in the world. And that through that, it takes thinking about it, reading the tarot, and drawing conclusions from these pictures, and meditation, and just sitting with knowledge. And so I think that's what I would want non-practitioners to think about and know.
I think that's a really good one. I think one for me, I wish that non-witches understood that magic and witchcraft are not something evil or dark, that, there is some witches do celebrate some of that darkness that a lot of people do fear. But I think that there's, power in the darkness. And so I wish in that sense, I wish that non-witches knew that there's nothing to fear from the darkness more than that witchcraft isn't sometimes a little bit dark. That it's okay to, there's no reason to be afraid of the dark, and that sometimes it's really important to go into those darker, shadowy places of ourselves, and that's part of what witchcraft is about too.
Yeah, no spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, you can't skip over those dark places, and there's a lot of good to be found in those in the shadow. So, there's the golden shadow, which we can talk about in another episode.
Yeah.
So the final thing to say is that next week we are going to be talking about the 5 of Wands for our next Leo season episode. And this card is about competition, rivalry, minor setbacks, and disagreement. Sometimes it's about quarreling over nothing or just for the purpose of having competition. So only just because you want to, it's like playing devil's advocate in some ways, that you want to feel challenge or you want to challenge somebody else. And or you're trying to like defend yourself when nobody's trying to attack you. So there's a lot of like conflict going on in this card. There's feelings of like not knowing where you stand with other people, and you might be kind of frustrated about that. And you may feel like hassled by someone else's opinions. So all of that are things that Erica and I are going to talk about, stories from our own life in next week's episode. And if you have a story that relates to the Five of Wands or any of the other cards we've talked about on this show, feel free to email us a voicemail at welisten@talkwitchcraft.com. And we would love to hear from you. We will play your recording on the show.
You can find out more about this episode by going to mumblesandthings.com/blog/029. Join us next week when we talk about confidence and pride.
Make sure that you subscribe so that you are notified about each new episode. And to help other witches find this show, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can also find us on Instagram at Mumbles and Things, and join us in the Mumbles Academy to chat about this episode with other witchy folk.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.